Welcome to another edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast. I know for many of our viewers, digging out or at least hunkering down with the snowstorm, some people went looking for snow, like the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, with you as always, one of the co-founders of Baseball Prospectus. I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. We're going to do the other half of what we did last week. If you missed the Kaufman Corner podcast, remember, we stream it live. Now it's going to be Sundays at 9. We're coming to you at 9 o'clock here on a Monday. Thanks for making the switch. Rany, travel problems getting home from his vacation. Maybe we'll hear a little bit about that, but a little ski trip gone wrong, at least on the return. But he's home safe. You can see him. That's the most important part of the equation. We'll talk about a couple of additions. Michael Lorenzen, Kevin Biggio, brought in by the Kansas City Royals. We'll talk about what we learned from this exercise. We'll get into the pitching. We'll talk about Michael Lorenzen, better or worse. You remember we did this last week with the offensive players, the core offensive players. We'll do it with the pitchers. We'll do that with Michael Lorenzen and his re-signing. Cole Ragans, Seth Lugo, Michael Wacha, Alec Marsh, Kris Bubic, Daniel Lynch, Lucas Erceg, the bullpen, the rest of the bullpen, the farm system. We're talking about it right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
This is the Kaufman Corner podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
All right, thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Off and running here on another edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast. Rany, let's start with the Michael Lorenzen signing. He's guaranteed 1 year, $7 million, $5.5 million for the first year, $1.5 million buyout on a $12 million mutual option. You and I have talked about this many times, that usually those mutual options are not going to get picked up because either the players far exceeded what they're going to get and they want to get to free agency, or they haven't come close to what they're due and the club has no interest in it. So 1 year, $7 million in all likelihood for Michael Lorenzen. Just your first thought, your reaction to this deal.
Well, my first thought was that my travel delay was not in vain, because the 20-hour delay in my return flight home from a otherwise lovely ski trip to Bozeman, Montana, my first time ever in Montana, that was delayed because the airline decided to cancel our flight because it was 28 minutes late. But it had the side benefit of delaying.
You want to real quick, since you're going to bring that up, do you want to shame the airline?
It's American Airlines.
Okay.
You know, look, they're all bad, but my understanding, having lived through this now, is that American does cut it close when it comes to their crew times. And sometimes that leads to this sort of thing happening where a flight that's 28 minutes delayed, somehow the crew is unable to fly. So, by
the way, is there a category of company that we don't begin these days with, well, they're all bad? Like, is there a category that we have?
No,
they're all great, but
no, I think you're right. I don't think sports radio stations. There you go. They're all great.
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
And dermatologists. We're
sure,
all great too.
Well said.
But the benefit was, by delaying the podcast today, gave us something to talk about. The Royals gave us some news, which we greatly appreciate. Been a little quiet on that front. But the Michael Lorenzen signing, it's again another example of the Royals doing stuff that makes sense, that makes so much sense we anticipate it on this show. Right?
Well, really, I think we're going to say that about the Biggio signing as well, right?
Well, that one may be a little unexpected in a good way, right? We'll get to that, but like the Michael Lorenzen thing, yes, of course he was a Royal, so that gives us a leg up on predicting who they might sign. But we had said all winter that ever since they signed Michael Wacha, like at the very beginning of the winter, that really all they needed on the pitching staff was a swingman, was somebody who could be insurance in case Kris Bubic has trouble making the transition to the rotation, or if somebody gets hurt, but also someone who you could put in the bullpen if your projected starting five of Lugo, Ragans, Wacha, Marsh, and Bubic, if they're all healthy, somebody can go to the bullpen. And we both said Michael Lorenzen will be a perfect guy to re-sign, and they did exactly that. The money is eminently reasonable. Like you said, it's a 1 year, $7 million deal. I'm at the point now where I'm not going to play around with the mutual options. We know what it is. It's 1 year, $7 million. They're paying him 5.5 this year, 1.5 next year, but it's $7 million, which means the Royals are paying Michael Wacha and Michael Lorenzen $24 million, which is less, I believe, than Sean Manaea is getting alone in his contract with the Mets. Like, the Royals have basically signed the starter they wanted and the swingman they wanted for this, like, slightly less money and less of a time commitment than the Mets did to sign Sean Manaea. Now, Manaea might be better, but I mean, I just think it's a really good use of resources for the Royals. It's a 1 year deal. I hate to do this, but I'm going to do this because it's going to piss you off, and I enjoy pissing you off sometimes. Jordan Lyles got 2 years and $17 million. Michael Lorenzen, less money for fewer years. Like this, this is exactly the kind of deal the Royals should be making. Granted, it's probably a deal that's made possible by the fact that they are now a contender. He played for them. He liked what he saw. It's probably a good sign that a guy who was on your team for 6 weeks or whatever, wanted to come back. But maybe there is a little bit of a dividend there that you can sign these guys a little more easily because they know they're playing for something. But the point is that they didn't have to give a multi-year commitment. And he is a guy who's had long history of success in the bullpen. Like, we know him as a starter for the last 4 years or so. He has started. He's been on this is his fourth consecutive 1 year contract, but he's basically been a starter since 2022. He'll be going into his fourth year as a full-time starter, but it's easy to forget he was a very good reliever for the Reds for 4 or 5 years before he tried to make the transition over. So he has proven he could be a very good reliever or an average-ish starter. Either way, that's worth $7 million to me.
Yeah, I like it because it gives them some more pitching depth, and it kind of fits with what they want to do. They've been more successful with some and less successful with others in this category, but the guy that's kind of the swingman type, right? That's what they seem to want to go get. Now, I think what makes it all work better and why it worked last because they had the frontline starters, right? The problem was, I think Jordan Lyles, not to get us going there, was signed to be that type of guy, and instead he was asked to be the anchor of the staff to eat the innings that we've talked about. And that's, they don't need that now. Now they've got Michael Wacha, Cole Reagan, Seth Lugo that can do that. So Michael Lorenzen looks a lot better in this role as opposed to, do you think he starts on opening day? Right, which is where we might have been a couple of years ago.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I think the signing feels better. Just like I think the Kevin Biggio signing feels better. We can kind of transition to that if you want, because he's not being asked to come in and be the guy, right? We don't project him to bat 2. I mean, something's gone horribly wrong, or 3 or 1 or wherever you want to put it. Like this is I've always said, I go back to like the Craig Counsell phenomenon of with the Marlins and the Diamondbacks and being a hero. And, like even back in the day, like David Howard was a guy that, at the time the Royals had just started their decline and weren't winning like they were. And so everybody blamed David Howard because he wasn't their everyday shortstop. But in reality, you go to New York, and I can't remember, they had some little guy like this that, would get 175, 185 at bats, but he got a couple of big hits against the Red Sox once. And so he's like an iconic figure for the organization because he's not asked to be a 500 at bat guy. Right. And I think that's why the Kevin Biggio signing looks a little bit better because, I mean, it's not like he's the starting second baseman. Right. There are guys with real talent in front of him. So I think it makes all these signings look better because they're mortar and not bricks.
Right. Well, let's put it this way. Who had a better major league career, David Howard or Christian Colon? Who is remembered more fondly by Royals fans, David Howard or Christian Colon? I will say this. The reason why Royals fans, myself very much included, were annoyed at David Howard is because the Royals protected him over Jeff Conine in the 1992-93 expansion draft. I have a long memory, Soren. So quickly, I just want to finish with Lorenzen. One other thing I wanted to point out, because he's going to be 33 years old. Actually, he just turned 33 this week. You think, okay, maybe a little bit old for a pitcher. The thing about Lorenzen that we haven't had maybe time to discuss on the show because he's only been a Royal for 6 weeks or whatever, is what a tremendous athlete he is. Like if you go to his baseball reference page, he's listed his positions. I don't know if you've seen this. His positions are listed as pitcher and outfielder. Right. And he hasn't done that in a while, but he has started 6 games in the major leagues as an outfielder. In 2018, back when pitchers were still hitting in the National League, he hit 4 bombs in 34 plate appearances. And the Reds were like, and mind you, this is a guy, I think at college was an elite hitter in the minor leagues for a pitcher. So they actually decided, because he was still kind of a reliever then, so it was kind of hard to get him a lot of at bats. But every time he got at bats, he raked. So they actually used him in the outfield in 2019. And he didn't hit a ton. He only had 48 at bats that year. But what I thought was hilarious, he pinch ran 13 times in 2019 and stole 5 bases. Like, if he just stayed in AAA, he would be the Shohei Ohtani of AAA. And I mean, yes, that sounds like damning with faint praise, but the point is, like, aside from Shohei Ohtani, if you had to put one man at the plate who is a pitcher in the major leagues right now, and your life depended on it, I think you go with Michael Lorenzen. He is that good hitter. His career OPS plus is 84. That is higher than Kyle Isbell's career OPS plus, higher than Maikel Garcia's OPS plus. Now, point isn't that the Royals are going to use him at the plate, but the point is that he is an exceptional athlete. And as we've discussed on this show many times, athletes age well. And so I actually think there's still some upside here with him if he gets into a role. Like, I could absolutely see him being like a lights out setup man if they don't need him in the rotation. I think there is actually a little bit of upside with Lorenzen.
He also, a couple things he does. One, useful in a fight, should there be a bench clearing brawl, not a small man. And 2, they had a stand-up comic, I wish I knew the name, as a female stand-up comic, and she said about Lorenzen, oh, this is the guy who conveniently can't find his shirt on the way to the meeting. Is that right? Because he's like jacked. Like, he'll win a bodybuilding contest for you as well. So you got that part of the equation covered as well with Michael Lorenzen.
That, hey, you never know when like a runway, competition will show up in the clubhouse and the Royals have to send somebody out there against the Tigers' best looking guy or whatever. So,
or if Kyle Farnsworth gets the red ass again, you got a guy.
Well, there you go. Exactly. You need somebody like that on your side of the battle. But the point is, he looks great in uniform because he's a great athlete, and I think that there's reason to believe he's not going to decline suddenly. Like, it seems unlikely that they will need his services at the plate, but it's always nice to have. You never know when, like, I was going to say you never know when a 17-inning game is going to break out, but you know what? With the zombie runners now, they never break out anymore. So it's even less useful than it used to be. But I still think he's got, he's a really good value for the money the Royals are paying.
All right.
But Biggio. So the thing I like about Kevin Biggio, well, there's a couple of things. I did not expect this sign.
Is it Kevin? I've always called him
Kevin. It's Kevin, right? Yeah, Kevin Biggio. And I didn't expect this signing. And I certainly, wasn't expecting it as a minor league signing. Like, we'll talk about him with the acknowledgement he may not even make the team, but I think he has the pedigree, the track record that the Royals certainly are hoping that he makes the team. And the thing I love about him is the dude gets on base.
Well, he did get on base.
Well, you say did this year, which was a terrible year.
Yeah, you're getting excited over his on-base percentage versus his batting average. Yes, he draws walks, but like when you don't hit it all, that still doesn't. I mean, we're talking about a guy that had a 314 on base.
Yes, 314 on base. How many Royals players this past year had an OBP of 314? There were 4. 4 of them,
right?
Yeah, and one of them was
not many, but is it really 4?
Yeah, 4. And Vinny was at 315. Right, so it was Bobby Witt at 389, and then Salvi at 330, Freddie Fermin at 319, Vinny at 315.
I object. It was 6.
Well, if you count Yuli Gurriel, of guys.
Bobby Witt, Yuli Gurriel, Salvador Perez, Freddie Fermin,
throw in Drew Waters if you want to. Yeah, 19 played.
And Vinny Pasquantino, 6.
Among the 16 players with 100 plate appearances, 4 had a 314 OBP. The point simply, if there's anything left in his bat, and there may not be, because his batting average the last 3 years
At
are
30 years
197.
old, how is he falling apart at 29? Like that's
Well,
the thing that is just
well,
like,
part of it is
that's
baseball
why I think
players
it's worthwhile.
age.
Like he's not 34, he's 29.
Oh, exactly. No, there's definitely reason to believe he can be better. Players age more quickly now because I think velocity is just so much higher that bat speed, it's catching up to velocity is a young man's game, not an old man's game. And his skill set, because he was so reliant on plate discipline coming up, those guys, if they're not great athletes, don't always age well. But I definitely think there is a reason to give him an opportunity. I mean, a year ago, he had a 340 OBP. His career OBP is 341. Again, one Royal, Bobby Witt Jr., had a 340 OBP last year, and that's his career OBP. Do I want him to be an everyday starting second baseman? No. But are the Royals signing him to be that? I don't think so. If they were, he wouldn't be on a minor league deal. Could he be Adam Frazier off the bench? Yes. Would he be better than Adam Frazier was last year? I think it's reasonable to expect. Certainly offensively. Now, defensively, he is not great. And that may be a concern. I would still say the difference between him and Adam Frazier at the plate, where Adam Frazier had a 282 OBP and also a 294 slug last year, I think it's worth giving up a little bit of defense, especially for a guy who's going to be on the bench ideally anyway. He's left-handed, which I think fits the roster well. They're a little bit short on left-handed bats, so having a left-handed hitting guy who can play the middle infield, those are not, Michael Massey is great, though the Royals already have one, but most middle infielders bat right-handed, so having him bat from the left side is also a plus. So again, I think he's a nice fit for the roster. He could be a useful bench piece. Didn't cost much, but to me, it's more just what this says about the Royals that, when JJ's talking about the importance of plate discipline, it's not all blowing smoke. Like, this is not the kind of guy I think Dayton Moore tended to sign.
Somebody asked for a Kevin Biggio, better or worse. If we'd put him into the last podcast, better or worse, where would you put?
Well,
better or worse for Kevin Biggio?
I mean, given last year, if we're using last year as the baseline, when he only hit 197, still had the 314 OBP, but only slugged 303, I would say a little better.
Yeah.
I mean, he was below replacement value last year, which is why you're getting him on a minor league deal. But I think he'll be better than that. Could he be a half win to 1 win player off the bench? Absolutely. I think, if you tell me right now he's going to get 200 to 250 plate appearances this coming season, I think I would be, I would take that as a good sign that he was good enough to make the team, but the Royals didn't need him to play every day.
Yeah. I like the signing for depth. And maybe somebody can unlock something there. Like, at some point, you'd like to see the Royals do that with a hitter. I mean, I'm not saying, like you said, suddenly he turns into a star or he's an everyday guy. But if you can use him in spots where you're like, okay, this swing plane works against this pitcher, and these are the guys he can be effective, and we're giving guys day off, then yeah, I'd like to see those numbers go up, and I think they will. I would say better, but it doesn't take much to be better than what he was last year, and I don't think better in the turn in this. Like, if he's better, it's not 450 at bats, right? The path to being better is limited usage and times that he can succeed. And I'll take my chances that Matt Quatrero and the new focus on the math gives him a chance to make him better. I would say better, and I feel pretty comfortable saying it. I just don't want anyone to think better means, you mean 25 home runs? No, I don't. I mean, like 7, 8, 9. Get back to getting on base at like a 335 clip. Being a little bit more effective as a fill-in guy.
Yeah, I know when we say better or worse, really what we should be comparing him is to who he's replacing. And if it's Adam Frazier, better or worse, I would say, yeah, probably better. Yes. Not a world-changingly better, but I think this is better, and every little bit counts.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. When it comes to managing your business, nobody needs to be dealing with a bunch of bumper cars in your parking lots. Let Gann Asphalt and Concrete take care of all your parking lot problems. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear in KC since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your lot as safe as possible. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Rany.
Put me and our sponsor together, and you get Ganny.
Yeah, that's what you get. Yeah, that's what I did. Let's get into first of all what we learned from this exercise. Doing it for the pitchers, we did it for the hitters. Anything jump at you when you put pen to paper?
Sort of the same thing that I got from doing it with the hitters, which is that when you add up every player overall, I feel like there's the Royals are going to regress, but it's probably a more gentle regression than I would have expected before I started the exercise. Like, I don't expect them to collapse. We're talking about, again, for 86 wins to 80 or 82, which is within the margin of error. So I actually, in some ways, came away from it pleasantly surprised that the Royals, despite a 30-game jump, are not likely to just fall all the way back or even halfway back to where they were.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you. I thought, boy, there's going to be a big step back because they surprised us by so much pitching wise. Although I am buying into the fact that Brian Sweeney, who we had on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, if you missed it, make sure you go back wherever you get your podcast and check it out, because we talked pitching with the Royals pitching coach a couple of episodes ago. And I believe in Brian Sweeney. I believe in what he's doing. I believe in his ability to connect the pitchers. I definitely believe in Matt Quatrero, Paul Hoover, all those guys, Daniel Mack, the emphasis on the math. I think they know how to apply the math much better. And so I think they're going to be better at everything they do than they used to be. So I'm with you. I don't think anything was a massive fluke, right? I'm trying to think of, like, who was somebody who was like, when they got 10 minutes of quality out of Luke Hudson, one time. And, it's just like, okay, I think any successes that they have are successes that are grounded in good data and good teaching, right? And so I agree with you. That's kind of what I came back with. I do think there'll be a regression. I think the offense is going to need to be better this year, and it wasn't god-awful last year. The bullpen's going to need to be better. We'll get into that if they're going to succeed. But I think there should be a regression. Let's start with Michael Lorenzen. Since he came over, he's the newest Royal. Where did you put Michael Lorenzen? Better? And again, for those that are new to this exercise, if you didn't hear last week's offensive breakdown, we got to pick one or the other. We'll talk about maybe we don't think it's going to be that different, but we have to pick better or worse. Michael Lorenzen, better or worse?
So obviously, since the Royals acquired him, late in the year, when we're talking better or worse, I'm looking at the baseline of what did this guy do for the Royals in 2024? Because that's kind of what we're using this as a way to say, is the team going to be better or worse? So what Michael Lorenzen did for the Royals last year, he was very effective in 29 innings. So to me, I'm going to say better, just because I don't think he's going to have a 157 ERA again, but I think he's likely to pitch somewhere between 70 and 120 innings and have an ERA probably around 4. And I think the value of that will be slightly more than the value they got out of him this year.
Okay, so I'm putting down better based on more innings.
Okay? Yeah, just more volume. Yeah.
More volume. Yeah, so I didn't look at it like that. I went with the fact that he had a 157 ERA while having a 390 FIP. And I say worse. I think there'll be a regression. But I think your point, I don't argue with anything you said. I think he's going to be a good, solid swing guy.
Right.
And I think that there's value in that. And so I like the signing, but I think a lot of people are looking at that 157 ERA and be like, oh, you throw Lorenzen in there. There's a reason why he got a 1-year deal, glorified 1-year deal,
right,
and for $5.5 million. Like, I'm with you. It's good to see him sign back with the Royals. For the Royals not to have to overpay with extra years, it means that they are a contender and guys want to sign here. But he was also available for a 1-year deal.
Yeah, exactly. Which is fine. And again, like,
it's fine, but it means you didn't have to outbid anybody for multiple years.
Right, which is great for the Royals. I'm saying it's fine that he's going to be a good, not great pitcher.
Yeah, but you agree that if anybody had a lot of confidence in him, he would not be signing back on 1 year. Somebody would have given him 2 or 3 years to go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure we're on the same page.
I'm actually a little bit surprised he didn't get 2 years, which is, again, to me, that's a sign that I think the Royals did very well to get him on this contract, because I don't think I would have blinked an eye if he'd gotten 2 and 14 from somebody guaranteed.
Boy, I would have been a little bit surprised. I think you might be expecting more from him. I think you definitely.
Well, I think he's been doing this for so long now. Like, again, he's basically been in this role for a couple of years. He's been on these 1-year deals, and this is the second year in a row that he got traded mid-season to a contender, because a team signed him basically looking to cash him in, and it worked out for him. So it would not have surprised me. He's never had a multi-year deal. If he had maybe proven he could do this role for long enough, that somebody would have been willing to bite. But I mean, I'm not shocked he only got 1 year. I just think it was a good deal for the Royals, good terms with the guy that they trusted. They know his arm, obviously, they had him on the team. So if there was a reason to think an elbow injury or something was imminent, they wouldn't have gone after him. So
well, I also think part of it is, I think it'll be interesting to see how they use him. And does he have a god-awful spring training and he still slots in as a starter, right? Does this push Kris Bubic back? I think it is interesting because I wonder a little bit, is this where he could start? Did the Royals have to promise him that he will start? Because there were some grumblings about him not liking his role in Cincinnati at times. So I don't think he was quite as attractive as you think he was.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they use him in spring training, and maybe we'll get some comments even if they have a press conference for him. Because I understand. To me, I see the appeal of Michael Lorenzen to the Royals in the sense that because they have Bubic transitioning, they need a guy who they could slot into either role and be confident would succeed. You're basically saying you're not sure how appealing the Royals were to him. And
no, I can see the Royals. I worry that he's signing back. Well, first of all, the Royals were a playoff team, and I don't know how much guys. They're a playoff team that's got a win total of 82.5, right? And so reality is now this is true of all the top 4 teams that are real major league clubs. The 83.5, 2 of them have 82.5, 2 of them have 83.5. I haven't looked at it recently, but when we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, that's where they were. One of those teams is going to emerge. And what we hope here in Kansas City is that it's the Royals. One of them is going to emerge to win probably around 90 games or more and take the division down. But my fear is that he signed back on a 1-year deal because he wants to start, and they gave him the nod that he will start. And because you just said they're transitioning Kris Bubic. They're going to go into spring training with the idea of him starting. Do I think he's going to start? I do. I think they believe in him, but did they, for depth purposes, have to promise more than he wants? That's my only concern. I don't know. I haven't been told that. I'll try to find that out before spring training begins. But I just come back to the point that I think it's great that they got him on a 1-year deal. You coined the phrase, and I think it's a great one. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. I agree. But I also think when you only get a 1-year deal, it speaks to what your value is in the market.
Sure. And I think we are arguing semantics. We agree about what he is. We agree about what he was for the Royals last year. It's a good signing. He makes the team better. He probably will be about as valuable in the aggregate as he was for the Royals last year. It'll just be a very different shape. Instead of being like dominant or at least very effective in 7 games, he'll be less effective over 25 starts or 50 relief appearances or something like that. So overall, his contribution will be similar. Let's leave it at that, I guess.
All right. By the way, I like this, Tyler. I can predict the press conference time for Lorenzen now, Soren. 2:05 p.m. Good luck. For those that don't know, I do a radio show that starts at 2, and Royals press conferences have been difficult, to say the least, to try to attend for various reasons, whether it's a 19-minute notice on a Friday night when you're having dinner with your family at a restaurant, or just, placement. So we'll see. Yeah, that'll be interesting. All right, Cole Ragans, better or worse? Man, he's pretty damn good. Pretty good.
He was pretty damn good. And so my answer here, and so prefacing it by saying he was pretty damn good, and I remain one of Cole Ragans' biggest fans. So keep that in mind when I say I think he will be, if I had to pick, I think he will be a little bit worse.
Okay.
And that is absolutely no knock on Cole Ragans. It is more a testament to just how damn good he was last year, right? Where he was 4th in the American League in the Cy Young vote, 3rd among starters. And that might have underrated him because I'm not sure he, was worse than Seth Lugo, who finished 2nd in the Cy Young vote. My concern is simply he was so good. It's just hard, you can't expect a guy to be a top 3 pitcher in the league again. He might even be better, but on average, I'm going to say a little bit worse. He might not make 32 starts. He might get injured at some point. or he might not be quite as effective. Although I will say his FIP was 299, which was even better than his ERA, right? But Tarek Skubal led the league in FIP by 50 points over Cole Ragans, but no one else in the American League had a FIP within 25 points of Cole Ragans. So I what we saw last year was absolutely real. If I say he's going to be worse, I basically am saying he's going to be 90% the pitcher he was last year, which is still a damn good pitcher.
And I'm going to go better. We're talking about a guy who's got immense stuff. They clearly added a pitch to him. I think he's, embraces what they're doing. And I think because of the FIP being better than the ERA, only slightly better, and it's tough. The better you get, the harder it is to exceed those ERAs. But the strikeouts are what had me believing. I think, number one, they have a usage plan for him. They're not overusing him. Everyone talks about the 2 Tommy Johns. I'm now starting to buy into the fact that it was really 1 Tommy John. It was screwed up the first time. He never really got all the way back from it. So I don't think this – I don't know. I don't know all the details. I know drilling in there a couple of times is not good. I don't think it's ideal, but it certainly is looking like he's coming back from a Tommy John the way it was. And I'm a believer after what I saw this past year. There were a couple of times it's like, every time he has a bad start, you're like, oh, God, is the elbow blowing up? It didn't. It didn't blow up on him. And I now am of the opinion that, he's finally getting some innings under his belt, and this is the time. I mean, we are talking about a guy that has 322 innings. That's it in the big leagues. Yeah. 322. The 2 years off, I think oftentimes freshens it. That's 2 years the shoulder didn't have to work, right? So I'm all in. I think Cole Ragans is your Cy Young winner this year. And I will say that he's better.
And I won't argue with you. Like if you told me he's not going to be injured in 2020, if you tell me he's going to make every start this year, I'd probably say yes, he's going to be better. I don't. My only concern is
you didn't have the balls.
No,
Randy.
I didn't.
You said worse. Don't try to run from your prediction. You said worse. Noted hater.
Yeah, that's right.
Ragans, Rany Jazayerli said worse.
Noted hater. That's right. Better. Yeah, hey, he needs a doubter. When at the end of the year, when he wins the Cy Young Award, and he says, I got a chance to stick it to the doubters, and everyone's like, well, who could have doubted Cole Ragans? I'm presenting myself as the sacrifice on behalf of on behalf of Royals fandom, that there was a doubter, so that he has somebody to prove wrong.
We will bring fans down to earth at some point after the fans have calmed down, which they still haven't. We'll bring Joe Sheehan on. No crap on Cole Ragans.
I don't know. That may be a very long time from now. The thing about Cole Ragans, you point out, I mean, it's the strikeouts, right? Like my prediction that he would break the Royals record for a single season strikeout record did not come true, but he almost led the league in strikeouts. He basically would have led the league had he started the last day of the season, which he did not, because the Royals were saving him for the wild card round, right? But he did lead the American League in strikeouts per 9 innings. 10.77 strikeouts per 9 innings. Do you want to guess who the last Royal was who led the American League in strikeouts per 9 innings?
Well, Zach wouldn't have gotten up there quite that high. Apier, no, maybe Gubasa.
Trick question. It's never happened before. He's the first.
Oh, really? Okay.
In 56 years of Royals baseball, he was the first pitcher ever to lead the American League in strikeouts per 9 innings. And he's left-handed, and he throws 97. Like, he's just, if you are somewhat new to the sport of baseball, let me reiterate on behalf of Soren, this is not normal. Cole Ragans, like, teams do not trade a reliever on a 1-year deal at the deadline for a quasi prospect, a quadruple A pitcher, and then have him turn into a number 1 starter 6 weeks later. That is not normal. That's the dream. That's everyone's fantasy about, like, when their team sucks and it's the trade deadlines comes with, why can't we trade, veteran X for prospect Y, and prospect Y will turn into an awesome superstar. That never happens. It happened here, but that's not normal. And the Royals just found an ace. And you talk about going from 56 and 106 to the playoffs. Finding an ace starter is one way to do that. So yeah, if I say he's going to be worse, it's a very mild worse. And you absolutely may be right that he'll be better.
Yeah, plus 900 are the odds, according to Tyler, on one of the apps he's looking at. I also want to point out, Cameron says, you're an anti-Reaganite.
Guilty.
Yeah, from the old Seinfeld anti-dentite. You're an anti-Reaganite. I got it. I got you, Cam. I got your back there. All right, we got to move a little quicker than this, or it's going to be a 7-hour podcast to get there. Seth Lugo, better or worse, Rany?
So this one, I'm going to say worse. I feel a little more comfortable saying that. And again, no knock against Lugo, but what he did last year was, by far his best season of his career. He was second in the league in Cy Young. He threw 207 innings. I think there'll be a gentle regression there. His FIP was not quite that good. He doesn't have quite the power stuff of Lugo, or Ragans. It doesn't have quite the strikeouts, but we're talking about, instead of 207 innings and an ERA of 3, maybe 180 innings and an ERA of 3.5. Like, he'll still be a very good pitcher, but a little worse.
Yeah. Michael, I'm exactly the same. I have nothing.
I think Lugo, it's just very clear what he is, that he was a little bit above his skis last year, but just a little, and that he'll still be a very, very good pitcher.
He's got he's got a great feel for the baseball, as Brian Sweeney talked about, with all his array of pitches. So he's always going to tinker and always try to find, he should have another weapon to go get him up, but he's not going to blow guys away. So, he might have a good strikeout night, but it'll be because he's crafty and getting them with his brain. And I think there's a limit to what you can do on that. So I'll go worse. I agree with you. Not way worse, but just a little bit worse. Michael Wacha. This is a tricky one for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's one pitcher I wish I could just say the same, it would probably be him. If I have to pick, I'm always going to go a little worse, just because he threw more innings last year than he had since 2015, the second most in his career. He's 33 years old. Like, he's more likely to throw fewer innings than more innings next year. His performance, his ERA has been 335, 322, 332 the last 3 years. Let's not go be before that, but the last 3 years, the performance has been incredibly consistent, but the innings have gone up each year.
Well, I will go the 3 years before that, because I think that's the reason to take him to go worse. Before that, 505, 662, 476. Guys get dinged up, guys get hurt, guys try to pitch through things. And he's not 24, right? He's going to be 33 years old this year. So that's why I'll go worse. But if you said he's going to be mildly better, I'm not shocked. He's not going to be way better, because he doesn't have the stuff for it.
Right.
But I also think that he has found his happy place on how to be durable,
right,
and how to be effective. And I think the fact that he doesn't really, overpower guys is a reason to believe that he can stay fairly healthy. So I like the same thing if that was an option for us. But I think realistically, at his age, and pitchers get hurt, you say a little bit worse. Right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alec Marsh.
So I think this one we'll probably both be in agreement with as well. I think he's
way worse. Oh, he's done, right?
No.
Don't you agree?
No, he's going to be better.
Say better, right?
Yeah, for one thing, he was a guy who, even when his performance in the minors sucked, we were still high on this guy. The stuff was always there. I pointed to him even in the dark times as a guy who, like, a good pitching organization would be able to fix and to be able to figure out what was wrong. Well, lo and behold, he comes to the major leagues. He's got a new pitching coach, a new pitching regime, and he didn't have a great year, but he had a good year, a much better year than he ever had in the minors, with a FIP that was probably was actually a little better than his ERA. He stayed basically healthy the whole year. Obviously, got hit by a line drive, but that's not a repeatable injury. And a 4.53 ERA is the baseline. So yeah, is he going to be better? I think so. And there's a small but very real chance he could be like one of the breakout pitchers in the American League this year.
Everything you said, I agree with 100%. Now let me give you the scary proposition. He had a 4.96 minor league ERA and a 1.367 minor league WHIP.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's not great. That's bad. And he's also we're not talking about a guy who's 19 years old and they rocketed through the system, and those are just 3 years and they kept pushing him beyond. He had plenty of time, at some stops along the way to post better numbers, and he didn't. So I think there is, like, if he has a bad year, if his ERA is 5.50 or 5.66 or something like that, and they put him back in the bullpen and he has to go down to the minor leagues and he comes up and again, he posts a bad year, we're going to be like, well, of course. Look at his entire minor league track record. His minor league track record says when he was coming back to, he got off to such a great start, That's who he really was. And they figured it out. They didn't really read the scouting report on him. That's what we're going to say, and we're not going to be shocked. But I'm counting on the people that for so long said that he had something, that they kept believing in him. They didn't walk away from him, that this is what they thought he could be, and that he was just a couple of tweaks away. Now he's made those tweaks and he's going to be good. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm on the better front. And I do think that the stuff, and we see him when he has a big strikeout, it's not, big strikeout night. It's not really fooling him. It's kind of overpowering him. And so I am bullish on Alec Marsh too.
And I mean,
probably be on if he goes cheap late in our fantasy baseball auction, he'll be on my team.
The other thing, of course, is you talk about the minor league track record was bad, but the one thing that always stood out, his strikeout rate. His strikeout rate in the minor leagues was 29%. Well, his major league strikeout is only 23%. There might actually be some untapped upside there. Like his strikeout rate was very good last year for a starting pitcher, but like basically league average, right? Like I actually think he could take a step up and start striking out more than a batter an inning. Because like you said, when his stuff was working, he was overpowering. So there's a lot of variance here, right? This is not a, this is a speculative stock, but there is definitely, I think, a lot of upside. And if you have 10 of these guys you can invest in, you'll have more successes than failures.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, Kris Bubic.
So Bubic, yeah, I mean, better. I think, kind of the Lorenzon thing, we're talking about a guy through 30 innings last year. So like it doesn't have to be as good in order to be more valuable. But the potential is there if they think he's ready to start in the rotation. If he can give you 140 innings next year, he doesn't have to be elite to be more valuable than he was last year. Again, 30 innings, 2 walks. If you take out the intentionals, 2 walks and 39 strikeouts in the regular season, 2 home runs allowed. Like his FIP was actually better than his ERA. His FIP was 195. You have to be really, really effective to have a FIP under 2. And we saw enough of a glimmer of this when he was in the rotation in 2023 before he got hurt that I feel comfortable saying his stuff will play in the rotation. Will he stay healthy? I don't know for sure. But his stuff played in the rotation when after Brian Sweeney got his hands on him, basically. And his stuff definitely played up in the bullpen. So, yeah, I think he's going to be more valuable for the Royals in 2025 than in 2024.
Granted, a very small sample size in 23 with the 3 starts, but the 16 innings, 16 Ks. And by the way, when you look at that ERA, I mean, I think the last game was when he got hurt. And I think he had like a bad.
Right. Yeah, you take out the last start. The first 2 starts were dominant, and then he got hurt in the 3rd start.
And so the fact that the strikeout to walk numbers were really good. I mean, I think the strikeout numbers will come down a little bit because he's not ramped up. But I think the strikeout to walk is not going to change. And I think left-handed and a control freak starting pitcher is really valuable. And I think I know you and Brian Sweeney and everybody else are, punting on the innings jump, barrier and threshold and all that. And the Royals blew through that with a lot of guys last year. And so we're going to see this year,
that's a very good point. The Royals have proven they're not afraid to take a guy who threw 70 or 80 innings or whatever in one year and go to 160 or more the next year. As long as his arm dictates that he's healthy and he can pitch, they'll let him pitch.
And he threw last year a total of an additional 36 innings, 35 2/3 in the minor leagues in addition to the 30. So he threw 66 innings is where he was. So I do think it'll be interesting to see where
that's a good point. Yeah. So I would think 120 bare minimum they'll be fine with, right? And I think if he stays healthy, like I said, he makes 30 starts. I mean, even if he just goes 5 and dive, 30 starts, 150 innings. Like I definitely see him get to that.
But I also think he's a guy that's getting ready to get expensive, and they want to get something out of him. Like the point is not to make sure he's ready to go get a big fat contract out there on the open market. The point is to get something out of him when you've got cost control. And so I think they're happy to barrel through that.
Right. And that's an excellent point because he's 2 years from free agency. Like it's easy to miss that because he's been gone for so much of it. But I mean, he's on the same service time track as Brady Singer. Like, I don't think anybody thinks of Kris Bubic as having been in the major leagues as long as Brady Singer, but by service time calculations, they are. So, yeah, I mean, you could almost argue that if the Royals really believed in him, could you try and get him signed to a long-term deal on a discount now rather than wait for him to break out? That would be a really out of the box kind of signing. But unless and until that happens, the Royals don't have any huge incentive to like baby his arm. There's no reason to put him at risk. But like, let's go. Like you got 2 years. Let's get the most we can out of him. And this is the year to take the reins off and just let him run.
It is such a scary proposition because you offer him a contract if he'll sign it. You're like, oh, what does he know? Is his arm already hurting? Oh, holy cow! What are we going to do here?
And I think players are more savvy than they used to be. Like in the past, you could do that because I think players sometimes themselves didn't, or their agents weren't sophisticated enough. Now I think there's a lot more understanding on both sides of the equation.
The bullpen and the system. How can that help out? We'll talk about that next. First, hear from our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, one of the guys you demanded that we have on this list to break down, Rany, was Daniel Lynch. You wanted to dive into some Daniel Lynch. Better or worse on Daniel Lynch?
So you make it sound like, yeah, I was chomping at the bit to discuss Daniel Lynch. It's actually a really difficult pitcher to assess because, he was pretty terrible, as he frequently is as a starter, was left in the minor leagues to start almost all season, gets called up with a month to go and doesn't give up a run out of the bullpen like right away. So the honest answer is I don't know, but if I had to guess, again, he only threw 43 innings last year. I think he'll be better because I think they found a role for him. I don't think one of the things, like if we had this conversation yesterday, I'm not sure I'd be that confident because now that they have Michael Lorenzen, it takes the pressure off of Daniel Lynch to start even more. Like it moves him down the pecking order of the rotation to 7th or 8th, maybe even, which hopefully means that they've decided that his future is in the bullpen. And if it is, he's probably going to give you more than 43 innings. And I see no reason why he can't match his season ERA of 3.32. So I will say he will be a little bit better.
I'm right there with you. I say better as well. And I say better because I think they're done with him as a starter. I think they may bring him in to spring training, and he's one of the guys that's competing for the spots. But I think very quickly he'll get moved to the bullpen, and they found something. They figured out how to make him effective. And now the question is, did they just kind of spot him? I kind of wondered if we were going to see him get traded, right? If they had just found the way to showcase him and to pretty him up and use him in situations like these are the guys he can succeed against. But we didn't really see him in the postseason at all, right?
So we did not see him. Didn't know really about it. We kept waiting to see him in the postseason. We did not.
I mean, there was no trust whatsoever that he could get those guys out. So I thought, well, are they? Because I think a lot of teams will go out and try to bloat some strikeout numbers, leave guys down low to try to make them look better in the minor leagues. And I thought, well, is that what they're trying to do? Just flip Daniel Lynch for something or package him into a bigger deal. And so let's pretty up his numbers. I still wonder that because they didn't use him in the postseason, but you can't deny, like, it was still all big leaguers that he pitched against in the big leagues, and he is very effective. And so I think they found a guy that's a nice piece for the bullpen, and that's okay. We talked about it, you and I, on the radio show, because that's how long I think the draft predates this podcast.
Yep.
That draft where it was Singer and Lynch and Bubic and all those guys, we said out of those 5, if they get one good starter, one bottom of the rotation starter, and one good reliever, they've exceeded the odds. Well, I mean, Singer was a good starter. Bubic, we'll see, maybe is going to be a decent starter or better. And Lynch is the reliever. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing just fine with that draft class.
Yeah, I think that draft is, it may not be a home run, but it's at least a solid single. Like they did not,
especially if
can't say they screwed it up. Yes, I mean, it's funny. It's been 6.5 years. That was the 2018 draft, and these were all college guys, and yet here we are 6.5 years later. It's like the old quote about, and forgive me for getting a little bit uh, erudite here, but the famous politician who was asked in like the year 1900 what he thought of the French Revolution, and his answer was, "It's too soon to tell." Right? Like sometimes world events and drafts as well. Sometimes it just takes a really, really long time to know, was it a good idea or not. I think we're teetering a little bit because, like I said, we still don't know about Bubic, but if they get anything out of him in the next 2 years, I think that has to be looked at as a successful draft class. I mean, they've already cashed in Brady Singer, so that we can check that one off. But yeah, Lynch. The other thing is, as shocking to me as it is that Bubic is already at only 2 years from free agency. He's already 4+ years of service time. In some ways, I'm more surprised. Daniel Lynch only is at he's a super 2. He hasn't even reached 3 years of service time. Meaning, he's not a free agent for 4 more years. Like, that shocked me. I was sure he got to at least 3 years of service time, but he's not even there yet. So, like you said, that could make him a very, very valuable trade chip. Because even if you see him as just a reliever, he's a left-handed reliever with 4 years of club control. So the point you make that didn't use him in the playoff, yeah, I'm not usually that conspiratorially minded, but you definitely have got my attention that they may be wanting to not showcase him for a trade, whatever the opposite is, or not showcase him in order to protect him from being exposed before a trade. So yes, if the Royals decide they don't have the finances to add a hitter and add an outfielder and they want to make a trade, I'd much rather they spend more money myself. But like, if they're going to do that, Lynch would be a really interesting guy to dangle out there.
There are a number of guys beyond that have got at least a taste of the minor leagues. Kai Bush, did you know that he'd made it to the big leagues?
Are you talking about from that draft class?
Yeah, Ty Madden. I'm looking down at the bottom. Nate Eaton, Jonathan Heasley, Austin Cox, Kyle Isbell, and then the top 5: Bowen, Bubic, Lynch, Coar, Singer, that have all made it to the big league. So, yeah, that draft not too bad.
Yeah, no. What about Kai Bush? The Royals did not sign nor.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, but it's
but he was a guy that they took.
They drafted. They just didn't sign him. Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, the top 5 guys,
that's probably the case with Ty Madden too. Because
yes, those two did not. But the top 5 guys, we obviously, Jonathan Bolin, you did make it to the major leagues. Those were the first 5 pitchers that were all college guys. And then their 6th pick, our 3rd rounder, was Kyle Isbell. Like, they got a starting center fielder there as well. Austin Cox, they re-signed him to a minor league deal. He made it to the majors briefly. Jonathan Heasley at least, allows them to fulfill the trivia question. This is the only draft in major league history, I believe, that had, I'm trying to remember the exact, I think it was that had five different guys in the draft all start a game for a team in the same season.
Yeah.
Right. Jonathan Heasley was the guy. So, I mean, it was not a home run draft, but I've seen so many teams that have like 5 of the first 80 picks or have some sort of draft haul because they lost free agents. And historically, teams that have that opportunity tend to mess it up. I don't know if it's because they get cheap and they don't want to spend all the money. A lot of this was before they had the draft caps in place, or if it's just like every team has 2 or 3 guys they really like, but it's really hard to like find 7 players and nail all 7. But when you compare this to history, the Royals actually did pretty well with, the largest draft haul that they've had in the last 15 years, probably.
Lucas Erceg, better or worse?
I feel like a broken record because I said this with Bubic, said it with Lynch, but when you consider he only threw 25 innings for the Royals last year, and he's hopefully going to throw about 70 this coming year, I'm going to say better. I mean, the big thing with him is simply his command got so much better after he joined the Royals. He was great fastball. We all knew that. Great stuff with Oakland, but had trouble throwing strikes. He comes to the Kansas City in 25 innings. He walked 3 batters. And when I see a reliever do that my radar goes off like crazy, because guys who throw that hard, who suddenly start throwing strikes, they almost always keep throwing strikes. That is usually a real tipping point indicator. So I'm very bullish that is for real. even if he regresses a little bit, though, 70 innings of Lucas Erceg is going to be a lot more valuable than 25 innings were.
Well, I'll go worse. I'll go a little bit worse because I'm looking at just the way he was kind of viewed as like people were calling him Wade Davis. And I'm not willing to go there. I do agree with you. I mean, I do love 31 strikeouts, 3 walks, and 25 innings. He is dominant. He's their best reliever. I also worry that I am not as much a fan of the leverage situation usage. I think his tenure last year showed it. I mean, he sucked when he wasn't in there in the ninth, and I worry about Matt Quatraro thinking that hey, it matters. They're human beings and not just numbers. Right. And how they perform best is a part of the equation. And he is not just a plug and play guy. He's a lot better in the ninth inning when he knows when he's coming in. And so will they use him that way? Will they have enough other bullpen pieces where somebody else can be a fireman? I hope so. If that's the case, then you'll be right. He'll be better. I hate your little inning cop out thing, which is what I think it is. Because his ERA could go up. And you're gonna be like, oh, look at his WAR is better. I was right; it was better. Like, well, yeah, because he pitched 78, 71 innings for the club instead of 25. So yes, he accumulated more WAR, but he also was a 385 pitcher that only saved 80% of his games and was taken out of the closer's role. That's not an improvement in my book. And I don't think that that's necessarily what's going to happen.
If he does that, I'll agree with you. He's not an improvement. I think he'll be better than that.
I think he'll be the closer all year. I don't think he'll be dominant. I think if they do the leverage thing, they're going to be disappointed. Because his stuff and his per batter attack said that he should be better than the 2.88 ERA he had. Clearly, the 1.17 FIP speaks to it, but it's because they, in my opinion, misused him. This is the one guy that I don't think it was criminal or anything. I think they had good reason to do it, but it didn't work, and it seemed to take them forever to figure out that. And they never did figure it out because they still used him wrong in the playoffs, in my opinion.
You might be right. I can't say you're wrong, but a couple things. One is
I might be wrong. I'll freely agree that I might be wrong too.
All opinions may be wrong on the show. That should be a natural disclaimer. But if I had the choice between a pitcher who a closer type, an elite reliever who is only successful in ninth inning versus a guy who can't be successful in the ninth inning, I'll take the former, right? Like that's an easier problem. Fine.
That was Joaquin Soria. I mean, Joaquin, maybe because they foolishly didn't use him in other ways, but he was just a ninth inning lights out guy, and we both said he belongs in the Royals Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, and I mean, in his defense story, sometimes they would use him as a 6-out guy. Like he was, a guy who could come in the 8th inning and do it as well. But the point is, like, if Erceg's problem is he needs the high leverage, that's okay. I'd rather have a guy. Well, let's put it this way: if they use him in a different way next year, if Quatraro tries to use him in a different role and it doesn't work, there's a ready solution. Put him back in the role in which he was successful. Like I'll give them the opportunity to experiment a little bit. Certainly early in the year, because a role he does work in, but if you can find a way to make him even more valuable, I think it's worth the gamble, I guess, even if I don't know if it'll work. So that's the main thing. Beyond that, it's just like you said, the 117 FIP. Like when I say he's going to be better overall, it's because I look at his 2.88 ERA, and I actually think he might have a better ERA than 2.88 because his FIP was so good. Even if he regresses, quote unquote, from what he did as a Royal, I think he's the kind of reliever, like absolutely closer worthy, a guy whose ERA is more likely to be in the 2s than in the 3s.
I'm going a lot off of where I think people are like, this guy is just lights out. This guy's, the Wade Davis kind of talk. That's a little bit.
If the baseline we're comparing him to is Wade Davis 2014, yes, worse would be my answer too. I just think compare what did he do for the 2024 Royals. If that's my baseline, I think he will contribute more for the next year. Which, from a standpoint of is the team going to win or lose more games, that's valuable. Like that's important. Like this guy's actually, he'll be on the team for 6 months instead of 2. That's a huge boon for this team's playoff hopes.
All right, bullpen, better or worse? Just the rest of the pen.
If I had to say, I actually am still going to say a little. I can't believe I'm being this optimistic. I'm going to say a little bit better.
I
I
agree.
mean, if you look, just here's the names and then the ERAs of the guys who threw the most games in relief for the Royals last year, other than the guys we've discussed already. Chris Stratton, who had a 5.55 ERA, James MacArthur, 4.92, Angel Serpa, 3.86, John Schreiber, 3.66, Sam Long, okay, 3.16. Maybe he'll regress. Will Smith, 6.53. Some of those in very high leverage innings. And then Nick Anderson, 4.04, but his FIP was so bad. I mean, they released him in the middle of the season. So, like, the reason why we broke out Bubic and Erceg and Daniel Lynch, especially, was because aside from those three guys, the bullpen was kind of terrible last year. But those three guys were so good that we got to the playoffs and the bullpen was no longer the liability it used to be.
On the final month of the season, it finally all came together, and I'm expecting them to somewhat pick up where they left off.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do think they probably need to add one more arm here, but it's hard to see.
I think
them
if it all
being
goes
close.
right, Michael Lorenzen is an arm that's added. You're saying one on top of him.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think they should be going out and signing a big ticket free agent, but he might even be like a minor league free agent type. I mean, the other guy, we haven't really discussed at all here because doesn't have a stat line, is Kyle Wright. I don't know where he will fit in. If he doesn't make the bullpen, the rotation, he might figure into the bullpen. So they kind of already have options there.
Yeah, we've talked about it. I think he is in the bullpen. I think that is the spot that he's going to be, and I do think he'll be. I think you got a chance for his stuff to play up, but I don't see how he can go the innings this year. So I think he might be kind of a regular 2-inning guy. You can kind of spot which days he's going to be, and I think that's going to be really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just think that overall the bullpen, will be a little bit better because they don't have to be that good to be better than they were last year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, and finally the farm system. And we grade this based upon like last year. The farm system was guys who had not pitched for the ball club, maybe more than just like a September call up, just a couple innings here and there, but guys that came from the farm system last year after not being part of the big league equation and pitched for the Royals. And we're talking about guys that have not really, for the most part, pitched for the Royals yet and are down in the minors. Like, we're talking about big league production, not will somebody emerge as a prospect down in A-ball. Right. We're talking about big league production.
Right. And that's very important. We're not talking about will the farm system be ranked higher next year than it is this year. What will emerge from the farm?
I'll even amend it to farm system help at the big league
level. Exactly. It's basically, the harvest of the farm system, right? What will they contribute to the major league roster in 2025?
There's only one answer on this.
Yeah, there's only one conceivable answer on the pitching or hitting side. It's got to be better because it's striking how little they got from the farms from rookies last year. We discussed this at one point, but like the most impactful rookie on the 2024 Royals was Nick Lofton because he actually got 147, I want to say, plate appearances, 171 plate appearances, and had an OPS of 519. Like I like the guy. I still think he's got talent, but did not contribute at all. The second most impactful rookie was tied in wins above replacement with Nick Lofton on the 2024 Royals was Steven Cruz, who faced 18 batters last year I think all in September, allowed one base runner and struck out 4 and no walks. And when we talk about like the farm system help for next year, specifically on the pitching side, Steven Cruz is a name I'm going to keep throwing out there because when I talk about Lucas Erceg turning the corner when it comes to throwing strikes, Erceg went from decent command to excellent command. Steven Cruz has had terrible command for most of his minor league career. And then around May of last year in Omaha, his command went from bad to average. And it doesn't sound like much, but it was a significant upgrade. And then he came to the majors and didn't walk a single batter out of 18. If there's a guy who could emerge as a contributor out of the farm system in the bullpen, Steven Cruz alone, I think, would make it next year better. Then you've got like Noah Cameron and a few other guys that you might see, contribute later in the year.
Yeah, I think out of, you mentioned Noah Cameron, I'll also throw out, some of the other guys that are the Ben Kuderna,
Mhm.
Blake Walters. Blake Walters is too far away, probably, but do they finally say, Frank Mazzucato, you're a reliever? And if they do that, does he then rocket up because, okay, we eliminate the pitches we've been working on and just go with what's good? And now all of a sudden he becomes a power reliever, kind of a Daniel Lynch. I think that there will be a couple of guys that make those kind of jumps, a Daniel Lynch type of approach. And that now as relievers, suddenly they become better. So again, there's just the raw numbers say that they have to be better. And I think they will. And I think there's reason to believe that just, in this new regime, I trust their ability to develop, to identify, acquire, and develop pitching much more so than what they were doing at the end of the day more.
100%. And also like the fact that they're a contender now, like they might be a little bit more willing to sacrifice the upside of a guy as an ace starting pitcher in order to get results now out of the bullpen, right? Like a Mazzucato type. Like, yeah, if you're planning to lose 100 games, what does it matter if you just let him try and develop as a starting pitcher for another year? But if you're in the, we're trying to win now business, and Mazzucato can help you out as a reliever, maybe you'll still develop him as a starter in the long run, but in the short run, he can help you now. So I think we're more likely to see a guy come up, this season because the Royals are looking to contend. They know they're a contender. And of course, I have to throw this name out just to annoy you. I'm not ruling out Asa Lacy showing up in a Royals uniform at some point this year.
Boy, that'd be great. I mean, why are you not ruling it out?
Speechless.
The pedigree of where he was drafted.
I mean that, and the velocity and the fact that like he's coming back from Tommy John. He might be the rare pitcher where it's like you're almost relieved he had the surgery because it's not just a physical reset, but a mental reset for him.
And I think that this is the last best chance for it to happen. I think for the reasons you just stated, but I think he had Tommy John because he was so screwed up on everything else. It finally put stress on his elbow. Like, I don't think the Tommy John was why he wasn't pitching well. I think he ended up having Tommy John because he couldn't figure out how to pitch well. And so he was trying everything under the sun and different angles and grips and he just blew out the arm. And I don't think he ever found anything before he blew it out. Like Bubic, there was kind of a feeling like, oh, damn, he just figured it out.
He had figured it out and it blew.
There's no indication that that's it for Asa Lacy. But Asa Lacy was asked about earlier in this podcast. I scroll back far enough.
Oh, there you go.
It was like, Asa Lacy, we're going to see him in a Royals.
It'll be the year 2041. Every player on the Royals today will have retired, and people will still be asking if Asa Lacy can make a comeback. So, it's fun to throw the name out there because look, lefties who throw 97 don't grow on trees, no matter what the Royals may have you believe by trading for Cole Ragans. And if the velocity is there, and like I said, if in the process of rehabbing from Tommy John, you are forced to sort of relearn how your arm works, how your elbow works. To me, that might actually be good for him because he's not he doesn't have to like unlearn anything. He has to relearn
or learn
or learn. Exactly. But maybe, when they talk about, when you have, no habits, you're trying to learn, I don't know, martial arts or whatever, you've never done it before. It's like, well, you don't have any bad habits. We have to unteach you, right? Like you're starting fresh. He's starting fresh. Maybe that will actually be a blessing for him.
Yeah, for sure. All right, there it is. We've broken down the pitchers. We want to thank our fine sponsors again, Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best when it comes to helping you out with any problems in your parking lot, whether it's striping, whether it's replacing the entire lot, signage, bumpers, drainage, you name it. All parking lots have problems, and we've got the cold weather, the bad weather going on here in Kansas City. A lot of folks that had some minor holes are now going to have massive holes. Solve that problem right away with our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com for the good doctor. Safely at home, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. I am Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Kaufman Corner.